Good evening. I'm Gwendolyn Owens, Director of McGill University's Visual Arts Collection, and I would like to welcome you to the presentation tonight, INUA and Qaumajuq, Going Forward Together, Krista Ulujuk Zawadski's presentation that is part of the Adjunata at McGill series of events. Before I go further, I want to recognize that McGill University is located on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, a founding nation in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Qaumajuq, or Montreal, the place, the island we call home, has been a site of meeting and exchange between Indigenous peoples for generations. And both the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples have long and rich histories here. We know that it's a privilege as guests on this territory and are committed to learning, improving, and standing together with Indigenous communities as we move forward. Our speaker tonight, Krista Ulujuk Zawadski, is from Chesterfield Inlet, or Illuake, on Rankin Island, Nunavut. She identifies as an Inuk curator, anthropologist, arts leader, researcher, scholar, and writer. Her areas of expertise are Arctic anthropology, collection-based research, story work, Inuit curatorial research, and practice. Krista's outlook, research, and work are deeply rooted in her upbringing in Nunavut, and she feels it reflects many aspects of her work. Krista is also a PhD candidate in cultural mediations at Carleton University. The future of Inuit art looks diverse to Krista. The field is continuously being recharted by innovative, creative, and outgoing artists that pave the way for new and diverse art. And if you'd like to see some of that new and diverse art, the 2 exhibitions in this building document that very well. Zawadski co-curated with 3 other Inuk the inaugural exhibition, INUA at Qaumajuq, a new museum and home of the largest public collection of contemporary Inuit art in the world, located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. An exhibition of Inuit art from over 90 Inuit artists. INUA opened in 2021. More recently, Zawadski curated an exhibition at Carleton University called ᖃouᒪᓗ, Threading Our Beads.
Hi, Qaumajuq Tagvanit Kapsi, Tamapsi, Qaumajuq Qaumajuq Tagvanit Kapta Kanangia Kami. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm Krista Ulujuk Zawadski, and today I'll be talking about INUA and Qaumajuq. I want to take a moment and acknowledge that and recognize that tomorrow is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And I think that's really important to think about, because for a lot of people in Canada and North America, and for every single Indigenous person here, the residential school era and the legacy that it's left behind has affected each and every one of us in different ways, but it brings us together. And I think that it goes well with the theme of INUA, going forward together. So tomorrow, when we are reflecting on that legacy, try to think about that. Like, how do we go forward together? How can we support each other in breaking down this horrible legacy and learning from it? And how do we support each other to not only continue telling our truths, but to support that and encourage that, so that maybe someday we could reach reconciliation. Because without truth, there cannot be reconciliation. Thank you. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. I know that sounds a little bit narcissistic maybe, but this has to do with situating myself, which is really important for Inuit and Indigenous people, that you understand where I'm coming from. And I'll talk a lot about this later on as well. So I'm an Inuk from ᖃ8 and Rankin Inlet on the west coast of ᖃ8 or Hudson Bay. And you can see on the map there. As I said, it's important that you know where I'm coming from, because this is who I am and this is what I carry with me everywhere I go. This is an important aspect of Inuit research methodologies, and again, I want to emphasize that. Here you see a photo of me. On the left with my dad, who's driving this boat, and my brother is beside me, and my sister and my mom's cousin is in the front. And I think this is really important because this really epitomizes my childhood, and this, traveling on the land and on the water with my family was a big part of growing up in ᖃ8. And like I said, that influences my work in every single way. Here in the middle, you could see, this is a bit of an old photo, but you can see my husband and I with our 3-month-old baby, again, camping out on the land. We're quite far from the community. And we're standing beside a ᖃ8 or a fox trap with our dog. And, it's really important that I continue this tradition of, being really connected to the land with my children. And so going forward, I think it's important that I talk about Qaumajuq before I talk about INUA. They're two separate things, and people often get them mixed up and think they're the same, but I want to talk about them because they happened at the same time. So Qaumajuq is the building itself. It's part of the Winnipeg Art Gallery, but it's not the Winnipeg Art Gallery, but it is. The Qaumajuq as a building, as you can see, it's separate from the Winnipeg Art Gallery. You can see the WAG is here, and then this is Qaumajuq. But they're still connected. Qaumajuq, its purpose is to house Inuit art, and that's its sole focus. And to work with the local Indigenous community as well. So it's not just Inuit art. They also want to include Indigenous art as well. Not to say the WAG doesn't do that already, but this is, growing out of the WAG into this beautiful building. In the early 2010s, the Winnipeg Art Gallery embarked on the development and creation of Qaumajuq. At the time, it was called the Inuit Art Center. And like Wendy already mentioned, the Winnipeg Art Gallery is the largest publicly owned, or has the largest publicly owned Inuit art collection in the world, with about 14,000 pieces. And they have a partnership with the government of Nunavut to house the government of Nunavut fine art collection, which has about 7,400 pieces. So there's a lot of Inuit art in there. But going back to the 2010s, they began this campaign to build this building. And, it's a lot of work and a lot of people to create this institution. And it opened in March 2021. There was a 2-day opening in the middle of lockdown, so everyone was watching it online. And I have to say, the opening was really beautiful, and I wish I was there. The ceremonies that Julia had organized, from the Winnipeg Art Gallery, were phenomenal. And I think you can still see them online. I'm not sure. But they had also launched the hashtag WAG365 that year to promote the opening. So this is what the building looks like. The Winnipeg Art Gallery created an Indigenous Advisory Circle to provide leadership for the development and the planning of the WEG exhibitions, education, community outreach, partnerships, and programming. And it had 18 members from across Inuit Nunangat, from Winnipeg, and outside of Winnipeg as well. And it was co-chaired by Doctors Julie Nagum and Heather Iglulilti, and ʔʔmᒪᓗ and I were our circle members. And I thought that was really interesting that we were in this advisory circle alongside curating the exhibition, and they really fed into each other. ʔʔmᒪᓗ is a co-curator, and she's sitting right here, if you're wondering who I'm talking to. So yeah, the advisory circle, we would meet every once in a while before the pandemic. And we worked really hard to work with the WEG in terms of, what does it mean to indigenize the Winnipeg Art Gallery? What does it mean for this new building to be built that is going to house Inuit art on Treaty 1 land, at the heart of the Métis Nation, all of these other communities, Indigenous communities whose land that Qaumajuq is on, we had to work with them to make it okay that this building was being built there to house the largest publicly owned Inuit art collection. And I think that it was a really powerful experience, that we weren't perpetuating colonialism in that way. We weren't as Inuit colonizing other Indigenous people, and that we worked hard to work with them. One of the aspects of this Qaumajuq was including all of the different Indigenous languages from the Winnipeg area, whose land that this building is on. And that included, this is the visible vault that's in there when you walk in to Qaumajuq. This is the lobby. This is also the lobby for the WEG as well. They don't have their old lobby anymore. So when you walk in, you see this beautiful visible vault there. And it's filled with Inuit sculptures. And you could go up the stairs and look. It goes into the basement as well, but you could see it at multi-levels. And going back to the opening ceremony, Julia worked with community to make the space okay. I don't know what the word is. The ceremony was an important aspect of indigenizing the space and the museum, and the reconciliatory work that the WEG is committed to doing. There's a quote here that was really nice, and I'll just read it to you. From Julie Lafreniere. In the summer of 2020, the WEG head of Indigenous Initiatives, Julia Lafreniere, passed tobacco to Dakota grandfather Wamdi Wakits and asked how to best host a ceremony for the new Inuit Art Center building. His directives were very clear. Ceremonial leaders from each of the 7 Indigenous nations of Manitoba would welcome the artworks and the building to this land, Treaty 1, Métis, and Dakota territory, with a day of prayer. It was a day to honor the ancestors, nourish the spirit of the artworks at the WEG, so that the spirit could be brought into the entire building and each room and gallery space, thus allowing for a safe opening. And it laid the groundwork for a continued ceremony and the ongoing spiritual care the art and building will receive. If you're able to watch the ceremony online, I highly recommend it. It was beautifully done, not only the ceremony, but also the cinematography and the sound and everything. But, part of, like I was saying, part of the work that we did in the circle was ensuring that the spaces were safe, and that includes the naming of all the spaces in the building. And this is part of the work that we did was creating these sound bites. And you could see this on the website, and I'll actually pull it up. But if you go to the website and you go to the tab naming, you could see the work that we did in the circle to create the names of the spaces as well as the building. But what's important is that you could hear the proper pronunciation of these names, which is really important. For example, this is Qaumajuq. And if you don't know how to pronounce it, you could click on it and you'll hear.
Qaumajuq. Qaumajuq.
And then you can practice. The Winnipeg Art Gallery also got a name from Elder Mary Corshane, and it's Bindigin Bewasea, which means come in, the dawn of light is here, and you could hear her.
Bindigin Bewasea.
As a non-speaker, this was really helpful for me. But you could go through and see all the spaces that we named with the other Indigenous communities and read a description and listen, how do you pronounce it? Again, it's the same slide. And this leads to Inua. So I'll talk about Inua. Like I said, I thought it was important that you understand the difference between Qaumajuq and Inua and how the work put into both of them complements each other and fed into each other as well. Because it wasn't just us curators coming in and saying, we're going to do all this. We took what we talked about in the circle, Indigenous Advisory Circle, and incorporated it into our practice and into the project. So here is our Inua curatorial team. And it just so happens that we were sitting in proper geographical order. So from west to east, there's ʔablutzaq, myself. ʔablutzaq's she's Inuvialuk, from Inuvialuk is Inuit Nunangat, I believe is how you say it. And then I'm from Nunavut. And then Asinnayak is from Nunavik. And Dr. Heather Iglulukti is from Nunatsiavut, and we just happen to, for this photo, we love it because we just happen to be sitting that way. And so Heather was asked to curate the inaugural exhibition at Qaumajuq when it opened. And this was like many years ago, before any of us had heard about this potential Inuit Art Center that's being built. And she asked us if we would co-curate with her. And you can see, sorry, I should have pulled up this map sooner. Here's a map of Inuit Nunangat, or Inuit Nunangat, Inuit homelands, where the places that we are from. The four of us co-curators. And she asked us to be on the team with her, and I immediately said yes. I thought it was a really cool idea, and that I had never really been on a curatorial team like that before. And it was really exciting for me to be in the circle as well as on the team. And it was, from my perspective, I was thinking, well, what are we going to come up with? The four of us are from different areas with different backgrounds, but let's see, what will we bring to the table? So we started meeting in person it was a few times a year that we met in person because we don't live in the same place, the four of us. And then we started meeting on Skype. And then we were trying, there's this new thing called Zoom. Let's try them. Let's see which one is better, because sometimes we'd get cut out. And then the pandemic hit. So we ended up doing everything on Zoom. But we did a lot of work before the pandemic. It's been, we've been at it. We were working on it for a number of years. What we wanted to do and ensure was that we wanted to ensure there was a lot of collections work in the exhibition, so that we could honor the collections and honor the Winnipeg Art Gallery, as well as the Government of Nunavut collection. It was like, well, we have all this beautiful art here in this building already. Let's use it. And that was our starting point. We also started making lists of contemporary artists that we wanted to work with, or artworks that we knew were out there that we wanted to see in the exhibition. And we started to think about themes and, you know, think along those lines. Here are some of the collections works that we were looking at. These are ones that we pulled out, and you could see the printout that Nicole would make for us to look at. And for me, I was really happy to see a lot of these pieces being pulled out of the collection, because they were, especially from the Government of Nunavut Fine Art Collection. I was the Inuit art curator for the Government of Nunavut for a number of years. And these have been sitting in storage from like the 60s and 70s. And I was so excited to see them coming out and for people to see them and appreciate them, and especially this jewelry. But we went through the collections, and then we worked our way through other lists that we had made. This is also a collection piece by, oh my gosh, I know her name, but I'm drawing a blank. Oh yeah, Qaumajuq, or no, that's not her last name. Ulujuk. This is a huge piece. This is a whalebone, and there's stone. And, you know, we also wanted to highlight, I think it was early from the get-go, we wanted to highlight things that were outside of what you normally saw in an Inuit art show, right? We wanted to show, this is a beautiful, huge piece by an elder, a woman, and, you know, we wanted to highlight these trailblazing artists who, you know, this is from like the 70s, but it's been sitting in storage. Let's take it out and let's talk about why was she a trailblazer. We also wanted to highlight, this was important for us, to highlight contemporary Inuit art outside of the typical Inuit art narrative. You know, we wanted to think about and showcase art that was not just prints from Qinghai and drawings from Baker Lake and carvings from, you know, the typical places you might think of when you think about Inuit art, because Inuit artists are all over Canada. And that was really important for us to highlight the art and the different types of art and all of the mediums that Inuit artists work with, including photography and stories. Standing beside Maureen Grubin's art, that's polar bear bones. And, you know, talking about the story that goes with that art piece. And I think that we did a really good job at that, you know, pushing what the stereotypes of Inuit art are and pushing those boundaries. We also wanted to honor, you know, the old art, the elders, as well as the contemporary, and show how they complement each other. There's these ceramics from Rankin Inlet from like the 60s and 70s, but there's also these contemporary ceramics from Greenland and across Canada and other places. And it was also the range of art we wanted to show, like I said, the different mediums, but also, the range of Inuit across, not just Canada, but in the United States, in Alaska and Greenland, but as well as urban Inuit. This is Lindsay McIntyre's work, and it's a beautiful installation that we did with working with her. So there's film in there. She interviewed people, so you could sit down and listen. You could sit down in the chairs there and listen. And but the idea is that this was her grandmother's living room, which brought a lot of nostalgia when people went to visit. Inuit that went to the exhibition, especially during Inuit studies in June, I think it was June, would walk into the space and immediately recognized all of these little things that were typical in all of our grandmother's living room. The chair, and it's not in this photo, but there's a rug in there that, yeah. We did a lot of loans and we did a lot of commission as well. I think there was 13 commissions, 12 or 13. And the motorcycle here is from here. It's from Avatak Cultural Institute, and it's, sorry, I can't remember their name. Matusi Iyaitok. And just to show, again, like to push those boundaries. But we also have Jesse Tungilik and his sealskin spacesuit, which we loaned, but it could have been a commission. But so the Qaumajuq, this gallery space is huge. It's on different levels, and this is what it looks like when you're looking from the mezzanine. And we knew that we had to fill the space with art. And we did it in a number of ways. Like I said, we wanted to showcase the geographic range of Inuit artists, and the range of mediums. But we also wanted to showcase and highlight, different nuances and different stories and how the pieces work together or riff off of one another, sort of thing. So we did a lot of this work. You can see the space here. We were working on the exhibition, like I said, during the pandemic, and it was also the building hadn't been built yet. So when we did installation in January 2021, we left and we hadn't even seen the final installation because of lockdown and that sort of thing. But we did we knew it was going to be this big space like this. And we worked with, and this is one of the things I'm really proud of about the whole project, is that at every level there were Inuit curators, Inuit catalog designer, or Inuk catalog designer, Inuk architect who did the exhibition design, Inuit students that did, and I'll talk about them. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. But there's this huge space. How do we work on it from afar? And Inuit are really good at that because Inuit Nunangat, as you saw, is this vast space, so we're kind of used to working together from afar. We worked with Inuk architect. She was a student at the time, Nicole Luke, to do the exhibition design. This is from the Inuit Art Quarterly website, so you can read this article if you want. But I didn't have these photos before. I didn't have them in my PowerPoint. But we worked with her to design to think about what it would be like to have an Inuk exhibition designer and to incorporate Inuit perspective and design and all these curves and colors and that sort of thing in the exhibition itself. So she worked on these sketches, like the Y. She sketched these temporary walls in the Y shape. The Y is a really important motif in our art, in our tattoos, in our tools. And so she incorporated that there. She also wanted to incorporate ice flows and icebergs and pans of ice. So she sketched that. And also talking about, like I said, the curves of our clothing, like what Inuit curves and shapes and that sort of thing. So she took those designs, the curve of our ʔa̓ma̓ti, and came up with these curving walls, temporary walls. And we worked with her on that, which was amazing. So you could see, no, you can't see it in this photo, sorry. I'll show it in the next one. But we worked with her on what's called SketchUp. And so we'd meet on Zoom and she'd share her screen and we would say, this wall should be moved over a little bit. And if you don't, I don't know, you probably know this because I think we're in an architecture building here, but it's all to scale. And she took all the 90, I think it's over 100 works that we have, and she took all the photos of the 100 works that we have and plotted them into SketchUp, and they were all to scale so we could move them around. It was so much fun, and it's like, can we do this again tomorrow, sort of thing. But what was interesting is we thought we had everything figured out in SketchUp, and then when we were in the building itself, we actually ended up moving a bunch of things, because when we saw the pieces together and how they engaged with one another, we realized actually this energy isn't very good. Let's move that piece over there. And the prep team, I think, were overworked a little bit, but they were like, we just moved it there, now we got to move it again. But they were great, they were phenomenal. But working with Nicole, we were able to think through the space and think about things like, we called this Zach's cabin, but it's actually called My Corner of Canada. Yeah. And this is from the ᖃouᒪᓗ team. So we could see it in SketchUp, what it would look like if we installed this building in this big space. And we thought, okay, this is going to work. We also, from the beginning, we were like, we're going to get a shipping container in there. And Stephen Boris, the director of the Winnipeg Art Gallery, was like, no. But we got it in there, which was amazing, because Glenn Gear's installation is in there, and my daughter, who just turned 7, still talks about going into the sea can and the art that's in there and the projection and the sound, and it's just this amazing work. But like I was saying, working with Nicole, we were able to visualize these things and then, make them happen. Like I said, one of the things that I'm really proud of is having Inuit at all levels of the project. And this included having an Inuk graphic designer design our catalog, Mark Bennett. And it was amazing to work with him, just talking through our ideas and then listening to their ideas and thinking about, the things that were brought back to us. It was like, wow, I never knew you could do that, It was just a lot of fun. But if you can get your hands on the catalog and you could leaf through it and you could see all these beautiful images from these beautiful photographs that were taken. And there are 11 contributors. We each had our own piece. And we had a student talk about the audio guide. Nicole talked about the exhibition design and what it meant for her. I think Mark has a piece in there as well. But what was really nice, I gave my parents one of these catalogs. I don't remember when it came out. Was it like March or something? April? I can't remember. It was a few months ago. And I sent it to my parents. And then about 2 months ago or a month ago, no, it was over the summertime, my mom said, she sat me down, we're having coffee or tea, and she said, oh, I've been meaning to tell you, I'm really proud of the work that the 4 of you did. Not just me, the 4 of us. And I said, oh, gee, thanks. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. And she said, no, I don't think you understand the impact that you 4 had on people. You broke down walls and barriers that have been there for so long that, Inuit all over are feeling the impact that you've opened up the space that Inuit can be more free and open with who they are as a person, as an artist, as an Inuk. And I thought that was amazing. I know it's coming from my mom, but I just really appreciated that comment, because that's what we were going for. We wanted to break down these barriers and these walls so that, the next generation or people today, or like older people even, can come out and be themselves and not be confined by these imposed frameworks not just Inuit art frameworks, but frameworks on, like heteronormative frameworks. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you and how that, going through the catalog, my parents haven't seen the show because of the pandemic, but when they saw the catalog, they're like, oh wow. One of the really important things, in my opinion, from the show is ties to, like I was saying, this idea of where we're coming from, who we are, and what that means in terms of being a good Inuk. This is one of the protocols that's really important for Inuit, is that you always tell people who you are, who your grandparents are, because then they know where to place you. But it also creates a sense of accountability. I can't just go and make up stuff about Inuit or my community or my family and say, this is what it's like. Because someone from back home is going to say, wait a minute, this is a lie. And this is what we wanted to do in the opening room. So I went a little bit backwards. I should have started in this opening room. But when you first walk into the exhibition, when you come up through the stairs, you could come in through the back as well, from another hallway. But when you first walk in and you come into this room, we wanted people to come into the show and feel welcomed and to feel, the warmth of our homelands. I think part of it, at least for me, was that you see this big white building on the outside and it's kind of sterile. In the opening photo, you saw the projection. They have this light projection on, but it's this big building, big spaces. But you walk into this space and then you're confronted with, or you're faced with, this nice, lovely green. Right now I'm all about sage, so I love it personally. But you're faced with, this beautiful ʔωμᒪᓗ with all of these sealskin flowers that are on there. And then the wall hangings behind the ʔωμᒪᓗ. The ʔωμᒪᓗ is made by ᖃouᒪᔪᓐ, and the wall hangings are by Qaumajuq from Baker Lake. And the 4 wall hangings they're all embroidered, and it's called the 4 Seasons, I believe. And it goes, how does it go? Fall, like from left to right. Fall, winter, spring, summer, I think. But we wanted people to, have this shock of color and maybe make people think about, hey, maybe the Arctic isn't this vast, empty, white, cold space. That there is actually beautiful things there, colorful things. And that's what we wanted to convey when you walk in. In the same space, we installed what we call Ancestor Pieces. It's to help situate us individually, but and collectively as well. So this is what the space looks like. You could see the 4 Seasons and the ʔωμᒪᓗ. And then the 4 pieces in the cases on the left are what we call our Ancestor Pieces. Like I said, what was important for us as a curatorial team was to make sure everyone who visits INUA knows where we are coming from. We did a podcast with Dr. Julie Nagam, and I'm going to quote us in Naya here. It's about being honest about who we are. It's very important to understand where stories are coming from, where information is coming from. And I also think with us putting our Ancestor Pieces at the beginning of the exhibition is also us being upfront about who's telling the story in the whole exhibition. It is from our perspective. So what this is we each brought a piece artwork from one of our ancestors. And to show that, this is us connecting to our homelands and to our ancestors and to our community, so that we are showing you that we are being accountable to them. It's not us just making stuff up and saying whatever we want. We took that sense of responsibility into every decision that we made in the exhibition. I have here, I'll read you what the panel says, just because I think it's really nice. Sivulliq. The 4 co-curators of INUA belong to the 4 regions of Inuit Nunangat. From west to east, there are Inuit Nunangat, ᖃ8ᒪᓗ, Nunavut, Nunavik, and Nunatsiavut. We understand who we are as individuals through our kinship and connections to our families and lands. By locating ourselves in relation to Sivulliqput, or our ancestors, INUA is grounded in and guided by the stories, teachings, and knowledge of our ancestors passed down through generations of makers. As best we can, these teachings are carried with us and passed on to those who will follow us. Just in closing, one of the other things I wanted to highlight about INUA is that I can't remember if it's because of the pandemic or if we were going to do this anyways, but the pandemic really made it happen in a good way, was through the Inuit Futures program with Dr. Heather Iglulilti, we created this audio guide that I believe that it's still up. You could go to the website, and it's called ᖃ8ᒪᓗ, what we found. And the Inuit Futures students, along with us and other people, created this audio guide where you could click on a piece from the show and you hear a story from one of the students. And there's a range of things. It's not just all the same. I think there's sound. Jason had this really good one where he's got, I think, tea boiling in the background, and he's got his Newfoundland accent, and he's talking about his grandma or something like that. And then there's other ones where I think they use sound like a dog team in the background. But I highly recommend checking it out. And like I said, we had Inuit at all levels of this project, including the audio guide with Inuit students. And it's really cool because it really gets you thinking about, from a different perspective about the art piece. So, yeah, and I think we are doing questions. So